So I got down on it, as the patois used to say in the 70s.
I won't sing it, otherwise we'll be able to put on the bad boy list. Okay.
Uh, Majority of countries do it, and I
Mm,
would suggest they do it to keep themselves looking an attractive place for investors,
mm,
both both within their own country, but by big industry, and also without
yeah,
foreign investment.
yeah.
The US, for example, changed the rules on items to be included in their calculations for inflation, removing higher inflationary items and sometimes replacing them with lower inflationary
Mm,
items to make their overall inflation
yeah.
figures look lower, look good.
Yeah, yeah,
This is the famous smoke and mirrors, which never last that long because the population count their money before and after going to the supermarket
mm,
and invariably count a lot less after their return than they
yeah,
used to.
mm,
So who really knows about inflation is the common man,
yes,
no matter no matter what the government does to try and fudge the books.
yes.
So the UK is no different.
Mm,
Rachel Reeves, the new Chancellor, has decided to write off government losses from the Bank of England, thereby allowing space for more borrowing, which is already at 100% of
yeah,
GDP. The previous government were no better, being extremely economical with the truth when it came to their balance sheet.
mm,
When people were being locked up for COVID, the government spent so much money, it was obvious that the money had to be paid back with interest.
yeah,
But they just put it all on the back burner and
mm,
took an ostrich head in the sand
yeah,
stand. Just say. They used to say our economy is better than Germany or is the best in the EU, but Germany was in recession, so
yeah,
that isn't difficult.
yeah, yeah,
And instead of trying to compare yourself with other failing economies, you should be saying, look, our GDP is increasing by 2 or 3%, and
yeah,
we're in the black and all this.
mm,
But they just sort of tried to hide it. So Mrs. Reeves, along with, like I said, the write-off of losses, will also keep new entities like the Great British Energy
mm,
entity off the
yeah,
book. You're going to
mm,
keep them off the books, which is going to lead to more corruption within the organization because nobody will be tracking the finances. They won't be included
yeah,
in the official government finances. It's something apart,
mm,
you know. And she does this so that she can borrow 30 billion pounds of new debt for projects over the next financial year,
mm,
covering up the negative parts of the economy to make it appear that it's more healthy than what it actually is. These things normally come back to bite you on the backside. So in
yeah,
October, when Miss Miss Reeves gives a speech in the budget,
yeah,
she's going to be talking out of both sides of her mouth because one part she's going to be saying it's
mm,
hard,
yes,
reminding somebody else,
yes, yes, yeah,
and on the other side, she's going to be saying, "But we've got this money here, you know."
yeah,
So it's all done through smoke and mirrors, fudging the
yeah,
books,
yeah,
trying to make the balance sheet. It's a little bit like me and my bank manager. I try and put a positive spin on it, but he knows the
yeah,
truth.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, got that. Yes.
Right, off you go.
Well, yes, yeah. We're talking about bank managers. I mean, this thing of being able to identify whatever you want. I went to my bank manager last week and I said to him, I identify as being a multi-millionaire. Yeah, I thought it was a bit unreasonable. I should have reported him because he didn't let me identify for what I wanted to be. But yeah, never mind. Um, Yeah, but that's effectively what governments are doing. Yeah, it's not a new thing. It's a very old trick. But cooking the books is almost what it is. Let's
Yeah, of
call it
course.
what it is. It's cooking the
Yeah.
books. Um, yeah, I mean, how do you know how well you're doing if you keep moving the goalposts all the time? What's acceptable? I mean, yeah, in industry, we've got things called KPIs, key performance indicators, that you always work to. Yeah, okay, these could move, but yeah, normally how well we're doing year on year or time on the time, and you have your personal ones as well. Um, why aren't we succeeding? What can we do to get it better?
Of course.
And um, I mean, this is what governments are always going to have a bother. I mean, how can I put it? Governments always borrow money because it's a good thing to do because they've always got reserve in, and they're playing a game against each other by doing this as well. And it keeps liquidity with the banks and everything else. It keeps money moving around and things like this. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a complex thing that my mind is never going to understand it. No, I'm convinced now that the people who should be understanding it don't understand it either anymore. Yeah, there was a time when people did understand international banking. Now people just seem to be a bit reckless. Okay, so yeah, people got to understand what they're doing. I mean, yeah, the 2008 crash proved the types of people we've now got at the top of our financial institution. And I heard people predict it before. Very older, experienced people who are on the verge of retiring, who are trying to protect their assets because they could see it all coming and warning other people. Um, Now we know what's been happening this week is that they're trying to, in the US, they're trying to close down anyone that is talking negatively about the economy. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, one of the candidates is saying the reality, and the other candidate probably saying the reality, and the other candidate is saying
Talking,
how
talking,
wonderful it is.
talking about how she was middle class when she grew up.
There's a theme here, isn't there? Um, yeah, I'm not too interested in that. Well, I mean, I don't care where anyone comes from. If they're doing a good job, they're doing a good job. End of story. But um, again, we don't always understand economies. I mean, I see what you write and say sometimes here. You have a better grasp of certain things than I do. Um, like you say, I look at how much money I've got in my pocket. I went to the supermarket this morning with what I thought was a reasonable amount of money. I was very disappointed with the change I got. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather hits into one entertainment for the weekend, as it were. The liquid entertainment. My budget on that. I've got to feed a family, therefore I have to cut on other things. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't overindulge, but it's a yeah. Us as the end users or the end consumers, we know exactly what's going on. It does affect us. We don't get our suits given to us or our clothes given to us. We've got to go to a clothes shop and buy them or get our existing ones mended, which my wife does part of her job. She adjusts other people's clothes. Um, it's a We're not living in the best times at the moment, that's for certain. There's probably a global economic downturn, to put it in a less coming. When I say global, I'm going to talk about this, and I've already said it a couple of times to a couple of my students, and I've just been reading, and there's a little bit of philosophy here. As you know, I don't delve much into philosophy. Once upon a time, civilizations went up and down. The Roman civilization, the Greek civilization, the Mayan civilization, etc., etc. And yeah, they were localized civilizations, not really connected with each other. Some trade, but not extensively connected. This is the first time in human civilized civilization history where we're effectively all connected. This is outside globalization. We're all connected. You and I know and think the same way as someone in China, for example. Yeah? Or Japan. Or Africa even. Okay? with technology and everything else, we're all connected, all potentially the same. It could be the first time, and just forget about the polarization with BRICS and the established Western world and everything. We're all still dependent on each other now. It, and it's going to be the first time possibly that an entire global civilization is going to take a downturn. And I think this is the worrying thing. And yes, we are talking on both us on the street, walking along the street, and the senior banks and everything else. Suddenly, we're all going to go together.
I think
Yeah.
I think I see this a bit differently.
Mm.
I think it's going to be a case of contrasts. Think of the number two, the yin and the yang,
Yeah.
the up and the down, the dark and the light,
Yes.
yes, no, right, wrong. And I think that where part of the world goes down,
Yeah.
other parts of the world are going to go up. And I don't necessarily mean uh, pound, shillings, and pence,
No, no, of course not.
but
No.
I mean quality of life. So in places, well, like here in Brazil,
Yeah.
you know, slowly but surely, the quality of life is improving here.
Yes. Yeah.
Over the last 30 years that I've been here,
Mm.
quality of life's improved a lot, a
Mm.
great deal.
Yeah.
Although mentality has remained more or less the same. So,
Well,
the way people think is more or less the same. However,
yeah.
at least they're thinking what they're thinking with a full belly
Mm.
on paved roads and
Yeah.
with flush toilets, for
Yeah.
example. Right.
Okay.
So on the other side, you've got countries that, like in the UK, for example,
Mm.
where they're having pothole championships in the roads because things have got so expensive that the
Mm.
governments just can't keep up with the expense.
Mm.
Um, and the tendency is to come down in the world. So we got the play. I think it was Stafford, or I think it was Stafford, where
Mm.
there's a bloke who's dumping in the streets. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think I think he was a holidaymaker from San Francisco. But anyway, there was a guy in the
Yeah.
UK who's taking a dump in the street,
Well, yeah.
and they call him the mystery dumper because nobody knows who it is.
Well.
Um, he
Mm.
leaves his message on the streets, and surprisingly, he doesn't leave much toilet roll. But that's another story. But anyway, the quality of life in the African nations and in some African nations that aren't
Yeah.
aren't in whatever conflict that they seem to
Yeah.
always have.
Mm.
And peaceful nations, developing nations are
Yeah.
rising in the world, and the developed world, unfortunately, is starting to lose its grip and is beginning to lower its standards.
Yeah. Um. That that is a problem for me. Okay, we talk about developing. The developing still need the established, not to survive, but to still be in it to a certain extent. The trouble is, established nations, if we call it old world almost, have done a lot of exploiting of the um,
Yep.
of the emerging country. I don't like, but yeah, emerging economies. We know that. I mean, we live in it. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to say the British Empire was entirely good or entirely bad. It did a lot of good, it did a lot of bad. Um, yeah, I'm not going to be an apologist for it, but I'm not going to say, hey, let's have another go at it. And again, okay, influences and everything else. But that's what I'm saying. I think we're so connected now in that we do have a bit of a danger. And okay, you could say Europe is a civilization. There would have been a time when there's been a civilization in Europe would have risen and another one had fallen, like you said. I think we now have a global civilization, and I think it's the first time in history it's there. As I said, there is a possibility that, yes, certain places will benefit or will do this. Maybe as a leveling out,
Right? Okay.
not a leveling out that's artificially coming. Well, okay, artificially, you know what I'm saying? Not something from a high level WEF, for example, who want their world order. Um, independent nations will be able to decide themselves on that. I mean, I think this has always gone on. I think it's a bigger scale, if it is as yin yang, as you say. It's doing it on a bigger scale than we've probably ever seen before. Is China going to overtake the US as the biggest economy? It probably already has in some ways. I don't know. I'm not, I see the figures. It strikes me the Chinese are deliberately keeping their economy down, but they could be subject to a crash that keeps getting predicted.
Well, that's if they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
That's if I'm sure they're cooking the books as well. I
Well, I think
mean,
everyone is. Yeah,
Ever,
like you said. Yeah. Yeah.
Evergrande a
Yeah.
couple of years ago was to tumble
Yeah.
along with all the other
Yeah.
construction companies.
Yeah.
However, they managed to the Chinese government managed to keep them afloat.
Well, I'm going to be
And
quite honest. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what are you going to do with all that debt?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really quite honest when you look at history and things. I mean, if I could ignore human rights issues with China, if you had money and wanted something made or something done, it'd be worth thinking about, yeah, being involved with a Chinese organization because they know how to get things organized and things running. I don't know about quality. Possibly quality is an issue, although the Chinese do look at that themselves quite
Well,
robustly with certain
if if
people. Yeah,
if
yeah.
the Chinese zoos are anything to go by,
Well, yeah, okay. Well, again, yeah, I imagine knowing the Chinese loss of face and things like that, I imagine there'll be some very serious questions asked about that. I wouldn't want to be the person who made that decision to do that. Let's put it that way. Again, we get back to human rights issues here, but it's a very, very, yeah, difficult thing to predict at the moment. We live in uncertain times. To a certain point, yeah, we're talking about our Western economies. Yeah, the US is quite embarrassing. The UK is very embarrassing. I don't know how
Germany
well. I mean, yeah, Germany is the powerhouse of the European Union.
not anymore.
Not anymore, but yeah, let's just say everything that crunched around it that was the middle of it. Everything else was around it. That goes. What happens to the EU? I think it's an interesting question. The EU, the idea that it's all going to be a collective that everybody's going to throw their money in and keep it all afloat. The UK left, although we are apparently still contributing in some sort of sweetheart exit, which to me, you either in, well, I'm not going to say you either in or out because that's encouraging the present UK administration to jump back in again. But yeah,
Like paying a palimony.
yeah, palimony, yeah, palimony, yeah. I mean, we still got to do business with EU. I don't really see the necessity of it. But again, okay, let's get on to a different issue. But yeah, every nation cooks the books. I've just expressed my concerns. I think it's the first time we ever have had a inverted commas global economy and a global civilization as well. Okay, we're having a few disputes around it over certain things. I am concerned it's going to come crashing or level, or it might be. I keep talking about not the end of the world, the end of times. It may be that we are going to get a new way of doing things, and it might be good. The other side of it might be good. The younger generation, Gen Z, and I see it in the Gen Alpha, all talk to each other globally to the point they ignore politicians. You see it. They're not at all interested.
Well, when
Yeah.
I was a kid, I used to communicate globally as well.
Yeah.
They were called pen pals. Um, when I was a sort of adolescent, young adult, I used to communicate globally. It was called DXing.
Yeah,
with the ham radio.
yeah,
We've always done it.
yeah.
The
But
the medium might be different, but the action is the same.
I think the medium is different. I think the bigger
Accessibility,
access, the accessibility of it all is greater than it's ever been.
of course.
Um,
Get it?
and I think the younger generation, the generation, they will build a world in possibly a way that we can't even imagine. It's an idealist view of it, and it's probably very, very hopeful. Um, there was a book again. I haven't read it. Richard, it's called The Full Turning, where it does talk about this, the cycle we're now in. We're in a bad time. We will probably get out of it. And again, this economy is all part of it. I'm probably talking a bit more globally than sort of as nations, and I'm not a globalist, but I can see a good horizon, but I think there's going to be quite a hell of a crash to get there. If you like, everything's and we're going to go, oh, look at this. The other thing I do think is actually quite good is that you've got modern thinkers now taking, if you like, center stage, the Elon Musks of this world. Yeah. Whereas, yeah, I have a few problems with him trying to tell governments how to behave, but he is quite a global thing in the way he expresses his ideas. People like him, the Gen Xers, are in effect taking over. We're only 50. A lot of us are only 50. Yeah, we've got another 30 years. We are probably quite fresh in our thinking. We're probably closer to the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas than the intermediate ones are, the way we talk, the way we think.